Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Joshua Suliruka here, your host of the Impact Podcast Show. And guys, I want to say first and foremost, thank you to each and every one of you that are, taking out the time to listen into our podcast show. Guys, I got two things to share to you all before we get into this episode. The first one is I would like to say thank you once again. I want to say thank you to those out there that are listening to this podcast episode either through Spotify or Apple Podcast. But I also do want to say thank you to those out there that are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast through our YouTube channel. Now, guys, if you are watching this through our YouTube channel, please make sure that you guys like this if you are receiving any value. And I'd love to hear, your thoughts, or if you guys got anything, that you want to comment on, please comment down below. But guys, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on that bell button for the latest updates on our next episode and our next video. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. But the second thing I would love to share is I love to share this, and it's actually stating our mission. And our mission is very simple. Our mission is on focusing on the one. And so if you are being impacted by this podcast episode, I'd highly encourage you all to share this to someone else that can benefit from this. Because remember, it only takes one person to, change someone's life, and that could, most possibly be you, and that would be cool. But guys, let's get straight into this podcast episode. I've got my sis on the other side of this Zoom call that I'm going to get to know, more of, because I feel like I've only known her based on the 5 a.m. Club videos that we've been sending each other. But we're going to get into that, very, very shortly. But before I even do introduce our next special guest, allow me to share to you why I wanted to get her on this podcast episode. And so, I've been, following this, this mighty woman on the other side for a couple of months right now, on her journey, and even just, receiving, the 5 a.m. Club videos, bouncing off each other. But I don't know, I just sense that there's more to her. There's more to her that a lot of people don't get to see. For us, I guess, content creators that are on social media, there's only so much that we can put out there. And I wanted to get to know more about her on a personal level, but not just for my sake, but for our sake, for the people that are out there that are wanting to know more about her. And so, she does many things, right? I've seen, she's doing radio host, she's most specifically, she does makeup, she's a makeup artist too. She's also a parent. And that's one of the things I want to get into today. But there's this one key reason why I wanted to get on here, and it's something that she's been doing for the past couple of weeks, and it's about sex talk. And that's the one thing that I'm really wanting to get involved in into this podcast episode. And so, guys, please welcome to the Impact Podcast Show, my sis, all the way from Queensland, Kimaea. Sis, welcome to the Impact Podcast Show.
Thank you for the introduction.
Oh, no worries.
That was cool.
How are you, sis?
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be here. I'm good. The rain's finished and I'm not working today, so I'm just enjoying my day off. What about you?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, no, good, sis. Obviously, as you know, from the 5 a.m. Club tags, you already know, I had the gym session this morning, and then, ended up prepping up for this. So, yeah, so far so good. But I know it's going to get better once we get into this podcast episode.
I'm excited.
Yeah, so I guess let's get straight into it, right? So we have people that are on this, podcast, episode, and they may be a part of your family, they may be a part of your friends, or perhaps your followers. But we do have the Impact community that listen to this on the weekly that may not know you. So is there any chances that you can possibly share a bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Kimaea Aliifaalogo. I am Māori Samoan. So my dad's Samoan. His name is Mawala Iwao Pule Amea Kirifi, and he's from Iwa, Savaii. And my mom, Evelyn Matehaere Ruha Hall, and she's from Te Whana Apanui e Ngāti Porou. I grew up in the Hokianga in New Zealand. So if you know the map of New Zealand, up north you've got Kaitaia, which is usually the last location pin when they're talking about the news. So I'm just a little bit further up from there. I grew up in the Hokianga. Mom and dad split up when I was quite young. I was like 4. So solo mom, and she was a substitute teacher. So me and my sister pretty much moved wherever the work was with my mom. So we moved around quite a lot. I changed schools like 13 times during my childhood. Yeah. And then when I was 14, I moved down to Dunedin. And for the first time, I lived with my Samoan family, with my auntie. And that was a huge culture shock, moving from literally the farm to white town Southland kind of style, and then living with a Samoan family who goes to e whakasā. So if you're in the island community, you'd know e whakasā is a very strict Samoan church. And then from there, finally moved in with my dad for a couple of years on the west coast of the North Island in Taranaki. Went to an all-girls school. That was another experience in itself. Went to the University of Waikato for a few years and studied economics and social development. Didn't end up finishing because I feel like throughout it, I was just kind of studying to tick boxes, but not really passionate about it. Met the love of my life from Otara, this cool Samoan guy, Kimaea Aliifaalogo, and we moved to Brisbane in 2012. We got 2 kids, a 12-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl. And then about me, so I've always worked in medical, like admin stuff. I've managed a practice for a few years and then gave that up, and now I'm doing more support work for a software company called Genie. I also run an organization called Brown and Busy, which is all about promoting and encouraging Māori and Pasifika businesses and just people in general who are trying to push past these limits, which I feel like are self-imposed most of the time. I also co-host a radio show called Pacific Wave Radio, which is every Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. Brisbane time. Make sure you tune in on iHeartRadio or 98.1 FM if you're in Brisbane. Yes, I'm a mum, I'm a wife. And what else do I do? Like, I also do a few other things, but it's mainly community work. Community work is where my heart is.
Yeah, amazing.
That's me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, sis, for sharing that real deep introduction about yourself. And we're going to get to know more for those out there that are listening and tuning into this video through our YouTube channel. We're going to get to know more about Kimaea, because I feel like there is so much gem in anyone, in anyone and in everyone. There's always that kind of hidden gem. And so we're going to go through that very, very soon. But sis, talk to me. So you were mentioning about hubby, right? You guys were together. What's the storyline behind that?
It's so funny because we've known each other for a long time. So he is one of my cousin's husband's really good friends. And, in those circles, when you're going around to your cousin's houses, you always see their friends and you kind of just say hi, whatever. Like, I didn't think anything of him. I was like, ew, gross. One of the boys, whatever. And because for me, I've always grown up quite sporty, and because I've got that sarcastic kind of nature, I've always hung around with the guys and been able to banter. So it wasn't anything exciting for me to have guys hanging around my cousins. I was just like, whatever, it's just one of the boys. Anyway, we met various times throughout life, and then it wasn't until we were about 21. So we're 32 now, turning 33 this year. And wow. I went to his 21st. I was not invited. I just went. He lived in Hamilton. He lives in Auckland. I lived in Hamilton. I went up to visit my cousin on a random weekend to Auckland, and she's like, "Hey, it's Leo's 21st. Like, you remember him, right? You should come." And I came, and then he fell in love with me, and then the rest is history. But that was pretty much it. And then I found out later that my dad's younger brother actually taught him in high school as well. So we've got all these little connections that kind of just linked us together. Yeah. And we're total opposites, I like to think. We both like to banter, but definite opposites.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's actually crazy on the fact that there are, I guess, outside connections before you guys got connected. And I was just curious to know how you guys met. And even that, how you guys are still stable, how you guys are still sustaining it, because, just like, any other marriage out there, it's not easy. It's not easy to carry, especially right after the honeymoon stage, what people would say.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks that, that honeymoon stage kind of lasts for a long period of time. It's like, for some people, it's literally the next day they're back to normal. And so did you guys kind of like go through that stage, or are you guys still in that stage right now?
Wait, I'm always in that stage. Like, for me, I'm such a lover, and that's where we're so opposite, is in the beginning, especially in the beginning. Like, Leo comes from a typical family, Samoan family, where there's no outwardly expressed love in the household. Like, you don't hear people saying I love you or I appreciate you in that communication, or even if there is conflict, there's no just taking it head on. It's just roundabout ways of expressing your emotions. And I found that really hard in the beginning, because growing up with my mom, my Māori side, everything is just out. And if you're angry, you're angry. If you're sad, you're sad. Like, if you've got an issue with someone, you just tell them and you hit it head on, and you say it with love and respect, and you try and get it sorted, and then that's it. Carry on, move on with your life. There's no time for that kind of energy. That took a while to kind of get that through with our relationship, because he was very bottle everything up, get angry. Am I going to get in trouble for swearing every so often or not?
No, all good, sis. All good.
Get angry, lose his shit, and it'll take hours, sometimes days, for him to say what the issue was. And it would be something so small, but obviously, because I wasn't aware of it, I'd keep doing it and keep doing it and just keep triggering him. And then, shit hits the fan, and I'm like, why didn't you just tell me? Like, you could just tell me, and then I love you that much and respect you that much that I'll work on that so that it doesn't trigger you anymore, or we could work on it together. But yeah, we've come a long way. He's not as much of a dick anymore.
Oh, I love it, sis. I love it. No. And it's actually a great point, though. Like, I realized that, when you're in a relationship, or, even any relationship, whether it's, with a significant other or just with a normal person, there's always going to be some sort of a disagreement, or there's going to be some sort of a, I'm right, you're wrong, or you're wrong, or you're right. And there's always going to be clashes because, if anything, we're different. Like, we're unique. I like, for me personally, I'm always looking at, okay, yes, we are different, but how can we make it happen? Like, how can we come together and kind of agree to disagree? How was that for you? Like, with hubby, like, how was it for you? In terms of your relationship, how did you guys work it out?
A lot of patience on my end, and I say that because Leo's very much alpha, and has always been that way and has that personality, but so am I. I've always been a leader, and in that kind of position in my family, where I'm the vocal person, I'm the person who's asked to MC, I'm the person who's asked to sort out disagreements. So I'm used to being in charge. And when it comes to two alphas, and two very different, where I'm, more from a loving, trying to nurture you through something, and he's just more of a just do what I say kind of alpha. It's we really conflicted a lot, but by the grace of God, we're still together, and it just took a lot of patience. And now, through a lot of adversity as well, we've managed to pull through, and we've just come to know and trust each other more. And you just know each other when you go through a lot of crap in life. Like, for example, I'll give you a couple of examples. We've been through miscarriages, and, if you go through something like that, well, even parenthood and the loss of parenthood, you've only got each other to lean on in those situations. And we've dealt with it so differently, like on each time. But even though we've both got different ways of coping, like for me, talking really helps me. Like I need to talk these emotions out, and I need to cry it out, and I need to express myself instead of holding it back. Whereas for him, it's work, throwing himself into work, throwing himself into the gym, like getting that physical output, and also trying to provide for his family, like just doing extra work to show that he's there in that act of service. But then at the end of the day, we'll still end up in bed together, and there's that little bit of time, that connection where we can talk on that personal level, not out in the lounge or in the car. It's like he needs that safety net to be able to express himself. So we found each other's safe spaces and learned each other's love languages, which was really important to us. And yeah, just kind of got better at communicating.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point, sis. And even understanding each other's love languages is like it's so key. Like I don't think people understand. And if people out there don't know, like there's the 5 love languages, and we got I'll name the 5. You got quality time, you got acts of service, you got words of affirmation, receiving gifts, and what's the last one?
Touch.
Yeah, physical touch. Yep. And so those are the 5 love languages, and it's crazy because I learned as I was in a relationship, going through a relationship, I started to realize that you don't necessarily have to have the same love language. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. And what's funny is me and Leo have got the same love languages, which is quite funny. So our primary one is physical touch. And I knew that straight away because I'm someone who does like holding hands or kissing or hugging or even just to touch you. I just want to touch you. And as a friend as well, like not a spouse, but as a friend, I do hug, and I will like do the playful pushes and, that kind of thing. So for me, I know touch to me is more of a, like an endearing way. And then next we had words of affirmation and acts of service. So I like my birthday because I like when everyone tells me how great I am on my birthday. It's the best day ever.
Yeah, come on.
Like I really like it. And it's funny the amount of people, I can't fathom why they would disable their account on their birthday when they say, it's because they don't want all the attention or the fake love. And I'm like, bro, fake or real, I want it. Just give it to me every day. And then acts of service, we both love serving our community and, just doing things for other people as well, more than each other, I feel like, because we both have each other covered in the first 2. I think it's more so giving ourselves to our community. But the big kicker is our kids are so different to us. Like I know my son's love language is quality time, and I really struggle with quality time so much. And I only just realized recently that like how deep the quality time was. Like I knew it was quality time, and I was like, yeah, let's make an hour, make sure we put aside time for him. But something as small as him telling me stories about his day and me getting up him, because I'm like, do it while you're doing the dishes. Like, why do you need to stop while you're talking to me? Do something at the same time. Like we've got stuff we need to do, talk and do your jobs. But I didn't realize until I was speaking to my cousin the other weekend. She goes, no, quality time means that's where your attention is. Mm-hmm. So you can't give your attention if you're doing the dishes and talking. They don't want to do anything else but talk to you. And I'm like, well, that's a bit counterproductive. I'm like, okay, so no talking while he's doing the dishes. Yeah, so I need it's those kind of things. And because it's not in my books as a love language, I don't, even with friendships, I don't need to see you for a year to value your friendship still. That I will talk to you every so often on Facebook or Instagram. I'll see little updates. But when I see you in person, we're just going to talk as if we saw each other yesterday. Like that for me isn't an issue. And I've had friendships go south because they were quality time people when I couldn't give that to them. So, I mean, it's a hard one. It's really hard having to, I guess, sacrifice what you perceive as love, like your love language for other people so that you can feed into them as well and sow into them. But I have to if it's my kids, I guess. So,
yeah. No, great point. Like, honestly, I think, as I was mentioning before about, the 5 love languages, like you don't necessarily have to have like the same ones. Although it would be good, right? It's good to know that like you guys can tell it. Like, so for example, my partner, like, her number 1 is quality time. My second one is quality time. And then my number 1's words of affirmation. And her second one is words of affirmation. So, we still connect through. And it's cool because all we have to do is go out and spend time with each other and talk. That's it. Like it can be as simple as going to the lake or just kicking back in the car for 5 hours. Like, but that's where we're feeding on each other, on each other's like love language. And I love the fact that you're mentioning about your kids, especially, knowing that, quality time was was the number 1. And like, you already kind of had that, I'm struggling hard to understand, like, the importance of quality time. And so, I'm curious to know, like, how, like for you as a parent, how are you able to kind of manage yourself knowing that, your lowest one in terms of quality time is your child's number 1? Like, how has it been for you? Like, I know that you mentioned that you were struggling a bit, but how have you been managing it?
I don't know. It is a struggle. It's definitely a struggle because I feel like as well, because I'm so busy and for me time really, I'm so short on time as it is with juggling a job and parenthood and being a wife and also having these other projects on the side. So for me, in those couple of hours that I have spare, I'm constantly thinking of what I can do at the same time. Like, how can I knock 3 of these tasks at the same time? Cool. You tell me about your day. I'm going to type this up and I'm going to put the washing on. And it's like, get it all done at once. And I feel confident that I can function in all those things. Like, it just makes sense to me, but I really need to pull myself back a lot. And sometimes I do pull myself up and say, like, just stop. Do the washing at 11 o'clock at night. Just keep, like, it's only 7 o'clock now. Spend that last hour that they're awake just with them. Like, put your phone away. And for me, putting my phone away is really hard, which I admit that, and my husband knows that too, because that's where my business hub is. That's where a lot of all my networks go and people ask questions and things. But unless I put those restrictions on myself and also keep my husband aware, and even as a family rule, like no devices at the table when we do sit down and eat, which doesn't happen every day that we sit down and eat together. But it is those small things that make a difference for the kids, and you can feel it and you can see it in their mannerisms. You can, like just that extra connection, which I get because they feel loved, because they're receiving it in a way that they understand. So we just, as parents, you just got to keep trying. Like, we're not going to be perfect, but if you already know what the solution is, it's only on you to get it. It's only you holding yourself back.
Yeah, no, great point. It's so. I love the fact that you were vulnerable enough to share that. Yeah, I'm not perfect, because I think, as I'm not a parent myself, but I have been not only just watching parents and how they work, but also my own, and seeing how they kind of work with being a parent. It's like, I believe that the ones that are, vulnerable enough to share the fact that, I don't have anything together, are probably more inclined and more likely to learn something new, but not just learning something new, but being willing to, accept the truth and move on. and not kind of allow the excuses in their heads. Whereas you would have like a perfectionist or a person that's like, oh, I need to be this way. I need to make sure my kids are going to this specific school. It was funny. I had this thought because my heart is to go into high schools and help out and do mentoring with the youth. I'm slowly getting into that. And one thing I do want to kind of have a conversation with parents about is always understanding that no matter what school you go through, like let me say, what matter or it doesn't matter what school like your child goes to, there's always going to be bullying. Right, there's always going to be bullying. There's always going to be something wrong that they may not agree with. So it's like, what's the solution to that? It's like the goal isn't to move to different schools, right? The goal is to make them better. Like the goal for them is to make them stronger in terms of resilience. So like learning how to bounce back. Because guess what? It's not just going to be in schools that they're going to be having trouble with. It's also society. Like when they go out in the real world and they start working, they're like, oh, I'm not going to work here because I don't like it. They go to a different job and they keep bouncing, like each and every other schools, or, if they finish school, they're going to go to different jobs. And then let's get real here, right? They may potentially be doing the same thing because, how you do one thing is how you do everything. They may be doing the exact same thing when it comes to relationships, right? They're bouncing into, different relationships. Oh, I don't like this person. And it all stem from being resilient not being as resilient and learning how to bounce back. And so I guess my point as to why I wanted to share that is because, this is something that can relate to what we're talking about right now. And knowing the fact that it's not about, it's not about going to kind of different or doing different things or focusing on different things. It's just all about knowing, okay, what can we do, to become better? And so what I want to do right now is I want to kind of like go off, I want to say off tangent, but I want to start, moving into a different segment into the podcast episode. We can come back to that, at the end. But I want to talk about you, sis. I want to talk about you and your life. This podcast is for us, but most importantly, it's for you, sis, too. I think it's time for you, to come out and just share about, I guess, your life lessons and how things have been with you. And so, one thing I believe in is before the glory, there is always a story. There's always a story behind the glory days. And, everyone's glory, or I guess everyone's success is different. It's like you don't have to be, a millionaire to be successful. It's just the way that you perceive success. And sis, I see the things that you're doing on social media, on and off, because I feel like, what you do in the private, in the private times will outweigh the things that you do in the public. And I want to get to know more about that side of you, the side that a lot of people don't really get to see in terms of your business and on social media, and also if you're a radio host and, makeup and all that jazz that you're doing. So I guess the first question I got for you as we get into this is, how was it for Kimaea growing up? How was it for you growing up?
I think it was pretty rough, like especially in the first. Well, like I said before, my parents broke up when I was 4, and so when they split, it was just me and my sister. And for whatever reason, they thought it was good to also split the kids. So I went with my dad to live in Samoa for a little bit, not too sure how long, but I know I had my 5th birthday in American Samoa. And my sister stayed behind with my mom. I mean, she was only 2. And then my dad realized that it was pretty shitty splitting siblings up, especially so young. So he sent me back to my mom. I blank out from about 5 till 7. Can't remember much at all. And I think it was just, when I asked my mom about it, she said, I think it was just adjusting to the whole situation. So I'd be interested to know when my brain will bring that back to life. But from 7 till 14, I was living with mom and my sister. Mom was in and out of a couple of relationships, and we witnessed domestic violence firsthand. So I think as young brown kids, you used to getting a hiding here and there. I always got a hiding from her partners, and it was just a typical kick up the bum kind of thing, like for dumb stuff, like spilling the milk or not doing something fast enough. And I think that just shows a lot of that frustration in their own situation and just taking it out on the kids, or frustration in their relationship. And I never thought of it as mom being a victim because she was always fighting back. So it was weird. It was such a strange thing to grow up with, seeing your mom fighting with this other guy, but they're both throwing punches. And so for me, I was just like, she's not a victim. Like they're fighting. It's not something bad that was stuck in. Like I knew I didn't like seeing him hit my mom, but I also liked her hitting him. So it was just like, I didn't really, I never thought of telling my mom to leave because I've always thought of my mom as strong. She's definitely got a reputation in her family and in the area that she lived in for so long of being that strong Māori woman who doesn't need anybody and can get the work done. And because she was also known to be a solo mom for so many years, she managed to mortgage a house with some land, and she did rodeo. So we grew up in the rodeo circuit, doing that over Christmas, watching her swinging ropes and being the whole cowgirl thing. And we lived a pretty rough farm life where it was just working all the time. I hated it. I just wanted to go to the city. I hated walking into cow shit and horse shit. I hated having to catch the horses. I hated having to milk the cows. I just thought my life was so hard. Mom was really good though. She trusted us, and she always spoke very openly to us about sex, about boys, about drugs, because it was everywhere. We lived in rural far north, so there were weed patches in almost every farm, and one cop to monitor this huge radius, and everyone knew the cop. All families knew each other. Everyone was drinking when they were younger. I remember my first beer that I was allowed. Mom made me drink a Rheineck, and if you've had Rheineck, it's not that great. And she's like, if you can drink, then you can drink Rheineck. And if you want to smoke, then you can buy your own smokes. And, just for her, it was you're going to do it anyway. So I'd rather you do it in front of me. If you're going to have boyfriends, I would rather you tell me who they are. And if you want to go stay over, then at least tell their mom to ring me and say it's okay with her too. So it was very open. And I did. I had boyfriends, and I was having sex quite young, and I was having parties quite young. And and mom knew about that too. I would be about 13 when all that was happening. And mom said, she's like, well, she's got condoms. So taught her how to use them, and she's got a phone. I had a phone quite young because I was really lucky. My granddad would buy us those kind of things, and just for him, it was a peace of mind. So I'd ring home if I needed to be picked up. Town was 45 minutes away. I'd go stay at my friend's house every fortnight. I was allowed to go out and stay, and she knew I was going out to party and to go get lit, whatever it was back when I was 13, 14. But I'd always come home and be safe and wouldn't report anything bad. I'm really lucky I didn't get into any situations where I was abused or taken advantage of when I was at these parties, because the parents were all there. We were just all drinking teenagers at these houses, acting like we were so grown up. Half of them got pregnant. The other half would be druggies. But I think the one thing that really set me apart from all my friends was that I really valued education, and I liked learning, and I was smart, and I wanted to get good grades, and I didn't want to be stuck in these kind of environments. So it was drummed into me for a very long time on my Māori side and my Samoan side that education is everything. And no matter what you do, just make sure you pass school. So I did it. I passed school with pretty good marks and got scholarships and went to uni, and then decided, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Much to a lot of people's disappointment, but that's fine. we managed to get through it, so it's all good.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, sis. Like, I love that. I love that, that you were vulnerable enough to share, or even that, comfortable enough to share that because, you know, I haven't had much people on this podcast show that is willing just to kind of lay it all out. And that's the thing I love about you, sis. Like, like even like your name, like your name on our Instagram, unfiltered. It's like it literally portrays you. And we're going to go a bit deeper into this podcast, podcast episode. I want to kind of like dive deeper into, just what you had mentioned, with your family and growing up and seeing kind of like the split. But I'm real keen and curious to know like how we can get that 5 to 7, that 5 to 7 block. What actually happened there? Maybe it might come through here, maybe it might come through later. But I guess my question, just to follow up on what you were mentioning in terms of your upbringing, is you mentioned a lot of struggles that you went through, whether it was being split from from your sister, you going with dad and then sister going with mum, or even just seeing mum bounce off different men and being in kind of different relationships. But even that, to make it even more better, seeing her fight, seeing her chuck some throw some punches. But like, this is where I want to go a bit deeper into you and ask the question of, like, throughout the whole course of your life, what has been for you, like, the biggest setback, or I guess the biggest struggle that you've gone through, since your time of living on this earth for you?
I'm trying to think. I can't think of any. Like, I can think of the most recent.
Yep.
There's been a whole lot of different struggles, and I think I've been good at dealing with it and seeking help where I need it and finding ways to heal through that trauma. And when I feel the triggers, that I figured out ways to kind of deal with it that way. But my most recent hard time was last year in August. My cousin's husband passed by suicide, and that was huge. Like, that was a real big out of nowhere blow to our family. In both of my families, we haven't experienced the firsthand suicide before. I've had plenty of friends who have told me about their family, and I've dealt with organizations who specialize in people trying to prevent youth suicide. But yeah, it was horrible. My cousin Shalina, she is 30 and they have 2 kids, young boys, and her and David have been together since like high school. Just high school sweethearts, no other girlfriends or boyfriends, just them 2. And they're just so chill. Like, Shalina's a little bit more chill version of me. She's on my Māori side, so everyone on my Māori side is pretty much black, like just out there and just off the there's just no holding back, out the gate, just say whatever you feel like it. David was definitely the opposite. He was that chill Māori guy, like real tall, mean and footy, a little bit of a grub on the field, let's be honest, but everyone knew him to be chill and just the opposite of Shalina. Like, he was a chill guy and always smiling, always jabble. Like, that was him. And so we saw him. He was in our line as one of our groomsmen. When they got married, we were both in their line as well. So, we had a very tight-knit relationship. David and Leo, my husband, played footy together for 2 years. They won a title, like the grand final. They worked together. Leo got him his job. Like, we were good. We were real tight. So last year, it was their son's 5th birthday. We went to that, saw him there. The following week, it was a stag that David was going to be best man at. Leo saw him there. The week after that, it was Shalina's 30th. And we couldn't make it, but we saw their photos. And then a few days later, we were told he committed suicide.
Wow.
So it was just, we were really blindsided by it. And we uprooted. So we stay in opposite sides of Brisbane. We uprooted our family, and we moved in with them for about a month just to help with that. Because of COVID, a lot of our family couldn't make it to be here to support. And because of COVID, there were restrictions on numbers anyway at households and with the funeral. My kids are really close with their kids. So my son is a gentle giant. He's huge. He's 12. And for him, he just felt the immediate need to be there for his little cousins.
Yeah, come on.
They would just play Fortnite all day and just hang out. And he would just be there loving on them and just getting them whatever they needed. I was pretty much back to full-time smoking and drinking because that's what she needed me to be. She was constantly in the garage, chain smoking to try and deal with her grief because her husband's just left. Yeah. And I was usually the person that would tell people that this is the situation. So people would rock up to the house, even on the day when we went over there. The guy who was getting married, who David was meant to be best man for, came in and he's like, "Where's Dave? Is he at work?"
Oh, wow.
And it was my job to kind of pull them to the side and let them know and somehow break it to them that this has happened to their mate, that this has happened to their friend, and then for them to rush over to Shalina and console her. And I'm just like,
yeah.
And I didn't cry for a long time. I cried when I found out. Definitely rang up Leo and told him what was happening. He left work straight away and we drove over. But it wasn't until later on that we finally got his body back, 3 weeks later, that then I cried because I just couldn't. I needed to be there for my cousin. She was doing the crying and I was organizing a funeral. I was also trying to help run a household where she's got 2 kids and people are asking questions all the time, and we need to figure out when to post the Facebook status that he's actually passed away, and sifting through questions and collecting koha so that we can put money towards the funeral and documenting it, and picking flower arrangements for his funeral, picking his clothes and helping her to pack his clothes for that. It was just so much. And yeah, that was a huge part of our lives. And it really, if anything, any good that came from that was that me and Leo are so much tighter.
Come on.
And the communication is huge now. The compromise is through the roof because we both just saw firsthand what it was like to lose someone. And it was horrible. It really hit Leo because that was his boy.
Yeah.
And for him to see kids now that are fatherless, and to see our cousin who's now got no husband in the home, and because Leo's such an alpha provider person, his heart just sunk, and he would go out and work every day. So he wouldn't be home to grieve with us. He'd be grieving through work. That's his thing, because he wants to come home and know that he's helped to provide for their family too. And it was just hard to leave. It was really hard to leave the house and move back into our normal, because I just felt like we were abandoning them, not letting them heal on their own. We just felt like, are you ready? Should we go? What if she needs us? What if she has more nightmares? What if the kids, need something? And it was horrible. It was such a hard time. And it took us a long time to kind of get through it. Every so often, I still now will randomly cry or just get this overwhelming sense of grief, and it will just come out of nowhere. But I think a lot of it for me is still anger. I'm still very angry that, for me, I'm like, you left my cousin and he left my nephews. But I know for Leo, more so for him, he feels sad for himself knowing that he couldn't be there for his friend.
Yeah.
So it's suicide's so hard. It's so hard. And yeah, such a really hard topic.
Yeah. Wow. Sis, before I even move forward, right, I need to take a bit of time, not just to breathe, because that was pretty heavy, but it's a fact to say good on you, sis. Good on you for not just for yourself, but also to your family. Your partner, your hubby and the kids. For making the choice, because you guys had like you guys could have done anything else, right? You guys could have been like, "Hey, we got you. We're just gonna be at home. Yeah, if you're gonna send me the link, like the Zoom link call, yeah, just send it to me." But you didn't do that. Like you chose to let go of everything that was considered, yours, and say, you know what, I'm going to go out there and serve other people. And that's a true testament to not just yourself, but also to how your family are. The values that you carry and the morals that you bring. And I wanted to be one of the fair few people to say, if it wasn't for you, like, this is me just being real here. If it wasn't for you, taking out your time to spend time with your cousin, I don't know exactly how different the funeral would have been, or I guess how different she would have been, because you were her comforter in a moment of need. And even the fact that you went so far towards, like, doing things that you don't necessarily do, the smoking and the drinking and just being there for her, that really goes to show on how much of a lovable person you are. And so I wanted to kind of just say that that's like one thing that I wanted to observe and just share to you, because you're probably still going through a grieving process right now. And if anything, like, it will just be good, because I know that your words, right, you're wordsy, and like you just need to hear it from someone. And don't worry, I'm the same too. Like, when I'm going through a bit of hardship, all I need is for someone to come in into my ear and say, "Hey bro, like, you're doing well, man. Like, I love what you're doing." So yes, I just wanted to kind of take that time out, put a pause to the podcast episode, just to say, sis, like, good on you. Good on you for taking out your time. But even for a month, because it wasn't like a day where you just, went out there for a day. You spent a whole month just being there and nurturing. And it makes sense as to why it was so hard for you to pull back. Why it was so hard for you to, leave, because it was like everything to you. Like, you literally seeing like you seen her kids as if they were your own. Same as hubby. Hubby was the same thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to work hard, to make sure that, I'm not only just looking after our family, but also others. And so, yes, I just wanted to say, good on you. And, like, this is, like, suicide is real, right? It's a real thing. And, for me, that's my heart as to why, not only as to why I wanted to be a mentor or be a coach, but why I do podcasting. Like, people don't know this, but I already know that Kimaea is feeling really good. Like, she's feeling good now. The fact that she's talking to someone that actually understands. And, the whole goal, like, of this podcast episode is to focus on impacting the one, right? And to see that one person that ended up, like leaving their life here on earth was, like, literally has impacted other people. I'm looking at you, sis, and being like, yeah, like, look how different you are now compared to where you were in August. Like, I feel like there's probably much more drive. There's a much more bigger why. Same as hubby. Hubby is probably feeling the same way, and maybe the kids. And so, if anything, sis, I just wanted to kind of voice that out, for you, because if anything, I know that you're probably still, processing and going through that little grief. And one thing I believe is that, the closer they are to you, the more longer the grief, like the grieving process is going to be. And so, yes, I just wanted to just kind of share that to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was hard, I think, during the whole funeral planning time. And it was weird because, like, I love, obviously words of affirmation, but it was weird during the funeral planning time for me to accept compliments, because I accept them, fine. But during the funeral planning for both his family and our family, and it was mainly his family here. He was really lucky that he had a lot of family here, like all his siblings and stuff, for all of them to be constantly expressing their gratitude for me, planning everything and organizing things from having a live to, helping them pick caskets and organize viewings, for them to express their gratitude in that way. And for me, I was like, this isn't something that I need to be thanked for. Like, this just needs to be done. And you guys you need to grieve. Let me handle it. And if I need a yes or no, like, decision, or if we need to discuss something, then I'll be there. But let me handle it. And you just be there and grieve with each other. And because of COVID, like, his body went away on Wednesday. we got him back on Friday, the next week.
Yeah, wow.
And then that was when we told Facebook. So that whole time, people are still trying to come over and visit. People are still wondering why they haven't heard from David in a while, and has he checked his phone, and all these questions that we're fielding. And then we got him home for that weekend, and it was Father's Day weekend. And that was the day that we said goodbye to him. But then because of COVID, his dad was in quarantine at home, so then we didn't have the funeral till the following week on Thursday or Wednesday, one of them. But in those few days that in between saying goodbye on Sunday and having the funeral on Wednesday, he was at the undertaker's on his own, and we were allowed visiting him from 6 till 9 p.m. on Monday and Tuesday, and even organizing that, saying, hey, if you can't make the funeral because we've got cap numbers, you can come see him at the undertaker's from 6 to 9 p.m. on Monday and Tuesday, like he's a freaking rental property.
Yeah.
Like it just felt so like great having that opportunity. But at the same time, organizing visiting hours for people to come pay their respects at an undertaker's, and not at home, just like we would in our culture, having our family with us at home. And instead of that, we had a Zoom laptop, with family from all over the country and from New Zealand, just all staring and expressing their, condolences and asking questions while he's sitting there in his casket in the house, and there's only a handful of us that are allowed to be there. So it was such a strange time, like a really strange time. And even after the funeral, we didn't get his ashes back for another week. So it was like this drawn out process of not just finishing the funeral and it's done. It was like 4 weeks of waiting and waiting and waiting and just ripping open the plaster every single time. So yeah, it was hard. So hearing the thank yous from people during the time, I was like, it's fine. Like, it's fine. Just go do your thing. And I'm just going to go have another smoke.
Yeah. Hard. No, 100%. And people, like when you're in the works and when you're actually getting things done, like you have like a momentum, and like you don't want to kill the momentum as you're continuing on board. So I understand where you were coming from as to that. Like, even though you are a wordy person, it's like, man, there's a time and a place, and right now it ain't the time and it ain't the place. It's like, if anything, I'm just in my realm of serving other people. And I'm just here to help them. Like, it's not even about me, but yes, thank you. But it's not about me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Thanks. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, legit. And I think it's crazy. It's crazy how, things like a funeral or like a wedding or some sort of like an event can really shift you or I want to say change, but it will make you kind of work on your feet. Like, you're on your feet and you're on your toes, being like, okay, like at this time, like, although I do love words, now's not the time to, accept it, or, to say, oh guys, thank you so much. It's probably more of a thank you. Come on, like, move on, because like it's a different dynamic. And so, yes, just like shout out to you for sharing it. But I got a follow-up question to the question that I asked you before about, what was the biggest setback or what was the biggest struggle that you've gone through recently? And you mentioned about, was it David? Was that his name? Yep. Like him and his passing. Knowing that you went through that and that was like a recent struggle, what has been for you your setup? Like, what's been like your kind of coping mechanism? Like, what have you been doing since the passing to get you where you are right now?
In the beginning, it was hard to push through, because I think I kept so busy in that month that, I allowed myself, and it was like that. It was, I will allow myself this moment and this moment to cry, and then suck it up because people need you and you've got shit to do. So that's enough. Carry on. And it's kind of something I do a lot with even just day-to-day things. Like if I'm struggling with kids or struggling with my marriage or struggling with work, it's like, you need to suck it up. Like have this moment, suck it up and get on with it. You just need to shift your mindset and carry on. So a lot of the times I won't let myself be in a moment because I feel like I am too busy for those emotions. And because I got so good at cutting it off, like giving myself 5 minutes, giving myself an hour, cutting, not even an hour, heck no, that's too long, but giving myself that 5 minutes to be in that state and then breathing through it and then pushing myself back out again, and not in a fake way, but in like a, let's go. Like, I've done it. Let's go now. It's become a really like a good thing, but also a really bad thing, because I do it as well with good moments.
Yeah.
With big, really good moments that should be celebrated and should be appreciated. A lot of those times I will take those feelings as well and be like, okay, cool, done. Let's go next. Like, I won't take the time to properly celebrate a moment or properly grieve a moment and feel it. So in the beginning, it was really hard, especially talking about it with other people. Like when we came back to our normal and we finally got to catch up with friends and family who they knew where we were. And for them, it's awkward, you know? They're like, how are you now? Like, how's things? And they know why we were away. And, you know, it's such a sensitive topic, so they don't want to trigger. But at the same time, the first question they ask is, how are you guys? And I'm like, do you really want to know how we are? Or is this just a, you know, and like a lot of the times it's like, oh, yeah, you know, good. But sometimes I just feel like, honestly, pretty shit. Like, we're actually going through it. Leo's handling it pretty stink. I'm handling it pretty stink. And you could see them kind of shift a bit, like, oh, no, we're having that kind of conversation. It's like, well, don't ask. Honestly, what do you expect? I've got to be truthful. So that was hard for a couple of weeks, just getting asked all the time how we're going, but knowing that it was just a blanket question. It wasn't really asking and checking in. We have a couple of friends, though, that check in genuinely. So that was good. But after all that, then I really did let myself cry and grieve and talking definitely helped me. A lot of it is, and like I said before, a lot of it's just anger, because, you know, for me and Leo, who haven't been to that point, I know that I truly believe that it is something it's a sickness, and that it is something that you get to a point where you feel like there's nothing else, or there might be some chemical imbalances or whatever. But for me and Leo, because we haven't been there, we've both been in low places, but not low enough that we feel there is only one way out. A lot of it is anger, because it's for me, I could never imagine abandoning my kids. I could never imagine, you know, leaving Leo behind to deal with everything, even to deal with packing up a house, or, you know, having to sift through all of my clothes and what is he going to do with my clothes. And I hate being a burden on people in that way, where I'm like, I'm not going to leave you my shit. Like, no, you can't handle these kids on your own. Like, what about these kids? So I think a lot of that anger came from me, where I was just like, how were you able to be with her all these years and to look at your son in the eyes and, you know, play with them and say they're your everything, and then up and fucking leave? Like, that for me was really hard to deal with. And then to have other people, you know, saying to my cousin, like, oh, yeah, but you're not going to go and replace him or anything. And, oh, I bet you're just going to go have a boyfriend now and do whatever you want. And I'd be like, how dare you? Like, first of all, he didn't just dump her. He's gone forever. Like, there's no more coming back. They didn't just have a breakup and they're going to slowly get back together again. He's never coming back. So whatever she does with her life is none of your business. However she raises her kids is none of your business. So there's still a lot of anger that will come out, and I think it's purely from a protective stance of my husband, of my cousin and the kids. But genuine sadness as well, just because I couldn't imagine raising my kids without their dad. You know, we've got such a strong team and strong bond, me and Lil, so I couldn't imagine doing life without him. You know, and just So I couldn't imagine losing a life partner like that, and so suddenly and unexpectedly, and just no warning, and feeling like I could have done more or I did too much. So there's a lot of those feelings. But other than that, like, we talk about him and we've got his photo up, and Leo wears their footy jersey probably once a fortnight just to keep his memory alive. Because at the end of the day, we still loved him. We still miss him. But I do want to punch his face. Yeah.
Hey, this is the truth, eh? Like, that's the thing I love about you, sis, and like how real you are and how unfiltered. Because this is the thing I love about doing podcasting, is that, especially on this platform, is that, like, take it for what it is. Right, take it for what it is. Right, like, you're gonna hear, how she is. Like, she is angry, and so you should. Like, so you should be angry. Like, if anything, I would rather you tell me the truth and be like, "Hey, I'm angry," as opposed to putting on a facade and saying, "Oh, like, I feel like, I feel so bad about him, and I feel so sorry that he had to go." It's like, no. What's the truth? Like, what's the real truth? How are you really feeling? Because you can't actually grow. You can't actually find freedom or grow out if you're living a life full of a lie. But the one thing I do wanted to mention too, on this podcast show or this podcast episode, is that, this is something that I've been, I guess, pondering on the past few months. As you guys know, I'm a freedom coach, wanting to help people find true freedom. And I started to realize this one thought that came into my mind, and I feel like a lot of people would disagree to me, like, when I say this, but I always say to myself, you won't know until you become that person. But the way I see it is, the person that is hurting you is just as hurt as you, right? The person that is hurt, like the person that is bullying you, they are just as hurt as you are. The only reason why they're doing it is simply because that's the only way. It's kind of like their coping mechanism to feel known, to feel valued. And, to look back on, David, potentially he was probably just as broken, as everyone else. And as a result, like, that's because I'm like, I've done some studies on, suicide, and it's like, it's the people that you don't even realize that we're going through, so much. And it's like, But society tells us, it's like, yes, that's right. Society tells you, media shows you, social media shows you that, they look good. But how are they really going? It's like that. And that's one thing I'm always about. I'm always about asking that follow-up question of the question of, how are you? It's like, okay, cool. All right, you're good. All right, that's good.
And how did those people get their facts? Did they interview the people that, committed suicide and ask them, like, how are you supposed to come up with these results?
100%. 100%. It's so true. And like, even like going even more deeper and asking, how are you really going? And this is the one thing that I've kind of found, especially in my own journey, because there was a moment where I was like, still, so close to doing it myself. But because I've gone through it myself, of attempting to do it, I can fully relate to those out there that may be already thinking about doing it. And so for me, I'm not focusing just on those out there that are bullying or those out there that are naughty. I'm actually focusing on those out there that are putting a smile on their face. The ones that are like, yeah, life is so well. And I kind of use a bit of subtlety into our conversation. Oh man, how are things going? Like, make it all chirpy, but it's like, all right, bro, so how are we, like, how are we really going? How is life really going for you? And it's crazy to see the amount of conversations that I've had, with particularly men that were like, bro, I was actually about to lose my life today, but I'm so grateful to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's how real suicide is. And that's how real, how easy it is for you to just leave. And so, yes, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for, talking about it. You didn't have to, but I know that you made the choice to doing that. And so, like, did you want to share a bit more? I know that you had something that you wanted to kind of touch base on.
No, No, that's okay. That's enough about David.
Yeah. But like, thank you so much for sharing, onto that. And, good on you for still working on it, still, grieving, because, as I mentioned before, like the closer they are to you, like the longer the process. And so I guess what we're going to do now is like, I want to kind of, channel back into what we were talking about before, but I want to get into the real reason why I wanted to get you on here. And that's about sex talk. Like, I want to get into this. Like, I'm probably more excited than any other poly out there that may be listening to is being like, oh, this is so weird. It's like, because hey, we're gonna be dropping some truth bombs into this podcast. But I guess before I do ask you the question, I want to kind of share to those out there as to, why I wanted to get this, going, and I guess where this all had come from, this idea of getting Kimaea on. So like she already knows, it's like a couple of weeks ago, I jumped onto a live stream, and it was you and Ainsley Broom, sipping cocoa. And so it was really cool to see this. And like, this is like a fun fact. The crazy thing about this is that I knew both of you. Like, I knew you, and I also had known Ainsley, because she's done a podcast on the Impact Podcast Show too. So it was really cool to see, like, two people from two different, like, countries, talking in one. And that's the one thing that really kept me captivated staying on. It wasn't just the talk, but it was the people that were, talking. It wasn't just the message, it was the messengers that were kind of having a conversation too. So I was like, man, I want to go deeper, but not only that, get kind of like a different perspective, especially for for society. They will see this, like, we've got a man on one side, we've got a woman on the other side, and it's like, no, we're breaking. We're not only breaking stigma, but we're also breaking stereotypes. Like, people seeing it and being like, no, they can't talk about this. And so we're gonna get into it right now, for the next couple of minutes. But before we even go in, I got a question for you. Can you kind of share to, people out there, just a bit of context as to what you're doing in terms of social media about sex talk?
Yeah, sure. So on Monday nights, I host this little segment, and we just call it Monday Night Chats. And the whole reason for it was just to try and normalize talking about sex in the Pacifica community. If you're from that community, then you know that it's just taboo. Don't talk about it. Even though you got aunties and uncles who have got like 8 kids and never kiss, like, ever in front of anyone, or don't even hold hands. They sit on opposite sides of the church. Like, I don't know. It's such a weird thing that, these islanders do, is that they even sit on the most furthest apart chairs, and yet they've got like 9 or 10 kids. So, there's something there, but just no one wants to talk about it. And of course that trickles down to the next generation and so forth. That we're just taught to be awkward when there's a kissing scene on the TV, and that everyone should just like, ew, and like, ew, look, you're looking. And that, like, grown ass adults still do that. So I think because we've been conditioned to feel that way about sex, obviously there's some negative aspects to that, where you can go far left and talk about, non-consensual sex, about rape, and about molestation, and how that kind of gets swept under the rug. And then we've got the other side of things, where people genuinely believe that when you get married, you just fall pregnant, because that's just what happens when you're married. You have babies, and there's no mention of sex, because there's no mention of sex as a kid or as a teenager. So I really wanted to try and delve into that. And I tried making it just a weekly segment, Monday nights, really open it up. But I think the one thing as well is that everyone's got different levels of filters and knowledge. So someone wants to talk about a butt plug, whereas another person wants to talk about how do I tell my husband that I don't like it the way that he does it. It's like totally different levels. But I love it. I love bringing that conversation out of people, and I keep it completely anonymous. So people will send their questions into me. I'll put up polls to see, what people choose, yes or no. if they would in that situation. So many different scenarios. People do little confessions, which I know half of the whakakalas, the little gossipers out there, love watching the confession time, where people just randomly confess escapades that they've been on. But yeah, I find it really entertaining, but also very educational, and it makes me genuinely happy when people say things like it's improved their relationships or just improved their knowledge. And I do know of quite a few virgins who tune in as well, just to try and learn something that's not from porn or not from their friend at school. Because that's where most people, I swear, that's where most of us learned stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, sis, for sharing a bit about that. And even like, as you're mentioning about, like pornography and school, it's like those are like kind of the only two places that you're going to learn. If your parents aren't talking about it, like if your parents aren't normalizing it, which in the Pacifica community is very, normal. Like it's been normalized that like you don't talk about it. And so, yeah, like just you mentioning about that, it kind of triggers me to know that there are a lot more other Pacifica people, especially young people, that are unaware about this. And so, like, my question to you is, what drew your attention? Like, what was like your, I guess, your reasoning as to why you wanted to talk about this and bring a bit of education?
I talk about it anyway, like with friends and family. So a lot of friends and family feel comfortable talking about sex with me because they know that I'll just give them my answer. I won't get all shy and be like, oh, gross, we're not going to talk about that in front of people. If people ask, I'll give them what my opinion is, or if I, have experienced it, then I'll tell them what my experience was. So I think it was just a random question, because I'm always interacting with people on my Instagram stories and always asking random questions and doing the most. So I remember that my first question was, do you feel comfortable being naked in front of your partner? And I prefaced it with, like, I know most of you won't answer this because you're just too ashamed to talk about this kind of thing, but I'm just going to throw it out there and see what kind of response I get. And the majority said that they didn't feel comfortable, being naked in front of their partner. And it wasn't. And when you go through the people who voted, a lot of the people who voted that they weren't have, in my eyes, is stunning. And like, that kind of body that you're like, why wouldn't you feel comfortable? Like, you should just walk around naked now, girl.
Yeah.
Honestly. And it was kind of a mixture when I was asking for feedback on why. And it was a mixture of, just that self-confidence. They didn't feel like they were at their ideal body type. Or for a lot of mums who answered, it was like, oh, I just want my body back from before the kids, and, that kind of thing. With those kind of questions and answers, I'm like, oh, so does your husband have the same body before the kids? No. Does he feel comfortable being naked? Because I'm pretty sure he does. Yeah, so a lot of it was that. And then the other part, a few people would answer like, oh, it's just not a thing that we do. Like, I wouldn't, yuck, turn the lights off, or like just cover up with the lava, or cover up with a towel, and egg, why are you in here? Like, go, I'm getting dressed. And then my next question after that was like, okay, well, who showers together? And even then it wasn't that many people that answered. And for me, it just kind of blew my mind that you're really not trusting your partner with everything about you, like as if they don't know you have roles. Like, they know you got roles, sis. They know. Or as if that would be a turn off, like your body, like that you would turn them off. It's just, it blew my mind. And I think for me, Leo gasses me up every day, and we both do that to each other. We both tell each other that we look great and all those kind of things, because
come on,
I love it. I love making him feel good. I love telling him that he's the biggest guy in Goodna. Like, that his muscles are like the biggest muscles I've ever had. And for me, it's, and that's genuine feeling for me. That's not just me like, yeah, you're massive, whatever. it's like I love the way it makes them feel. And the amount of times I've heard other people say that that's kind of like foreplay. It's just those little things like messaging each other or letting each other know how much you appreciate them and how they look good and how they feel good. That foreplay doesn't need to just be physical, that it's also just those exchange of words
Yeah.
to each other. So yeah, it's just sad. It just saddens me that couples don't love on each other like that, and that they don't tell each other that they look good or that they feel good, or that they appreciate their body for what it is.
Yeah. And you know what? I want to kind of bring some truth into this, into this conversation, because man, this is really good. Like, this is really good where we're coming, where we're coming from in terms of this, this talk, because, when you were mentioning about the question being like, are you guys, like, how many of you, or do you find it really uncomfortable, to kind of be, naked in front of your partner? And it's crazy to see that people still, whether you have a good body or not, right? Whether you have the flashiest of bodies or whether you have nobody, right? Nobody at all. It's like, I started to learn that at the end of the day, this is a real truth. I think people need to hear this. I feel like if you're not willing to be true, if you're not willing to be truthful, like in front of your partner with clothes on, how do you expect yourself to be vulnerable and be true to your partner with your clothes off? But you see, this is where the truth comes in, because if you look at the Pacifica community, what's the one thing that we do not get taught? Instead of us getting taught about it, we end up getting like pushed down or suppressed. Sex, right? It's like, oh, you can't be in the same room. In some cultures, it's like, oh, you can't be in the same room as, the girls. If the boys and the girls, you can't be in the same room. It's like, okay, why is that the case? And it's like, oh, because there's a little bit of like temptation or whatever the case may be. Everyone has their different views.
Yeah.
But one thing I started to learn is because Pacifica people aren't being taught, right? They do whatever they see. Right, they go into pornography and they look at that and be like, oh, that's how you're meant to be doing it. And if it's not that, it's probably at school, right, where they get an education. Or let's say, for example, they don't know anything, and so they just try, right? They try before they buy. And so the truth that I want to bring out there to those out there is that if you're in a relationship right now, or if you're wanting to be in a relationship, a quick tip for you is, if you're not willing to be straight up, if you're not willing to be transparent with your partner with clothes on, I'm telling you this right now, you are going to get into a position of being insecure about your body. And also when it comes to, those moments, whether you're married or not, like for me, I'm not focusing on that. For me, I'm just focusing on the real root being like the fact that you find it so uncomfortable on being naked with your partner. What I would propose to you, to those out there that may be feeling a bit uncomfortable, being kind of naked in front of their partner, perhaps I would ask you the question of how vulnerable or how true are you in front of your parent, or not your parent, your partner, when it comes to yourself, you being yourself. Because I've learned that if you're willing to be vulnerable, if you're willing to be transparent, and if you're willing to be true to your partner and tell them everything, especially when it comes to like a marriage, like if you're married, like that's what you're meant to be doing, because you be like, to become one, like you're meant to be, doing like life together. But the truth that I just wanted to bring now, because I reckon this is the best time to talk about it, is understanding that if you're going through a struggle of being uncomfortable about your body, so especially when it comes to your significant other, like I would probably go back to square one, go back to the basics and figure out, okay, how true am I being with my partner? Is that something that like you can agree with, sis?
Yeah, definitely. Because it's not like, if you're not in it to yourself as well, like if you're not owning your own stuff, then how are you supposed to share it with that person as well? Like you can't just pretend. And if you strip away if you've got the lights on and if you strip away that layer of clothes, you're so exposed, so unless you can deal with it yourself, there is no way that you can share it fully with that other person. And the amount of women that I know who hate their bodies, hate the way this looks, hate the way that sags, hate the way that those scars look like that, and a lot of it is just that spirit of comparison. And,
Yes.
you know, like something as dumb as, oh, yeah, but he likes all of Beyonce's photos. I'm like, bro, Beyonce doesn't care about him. Honestly, like, no one looks like Beyonce.
Hard.
Beyonce looks like Beyonce. It's like your man loves you, like your body. There's a fantasy and then there's reality. And the reality is Beyonce is never going to look at your man. Okay. So the reality is he's with you. He loves you. He goes to bed with you. He looks at your body. He appreciates your ass, your smile, your face, all these kind of things about you. And it's time you start appreciating them too.
Yeah.
And feeling yourself too, because confidence is huge. Confidence in yourself is huge. Until you love your own body, there's no way that you can tell someone else to love it. Like none.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to get there. That's for sure. But and a lot of it is because Leo just gasses me up. So I'm just like, well, how can I not love my body if you love it that much?
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. And like, this is the reason why I wanted to talk about this, because, you know, I had a bit of like, you know, kind of add-ons to what you and Ainsley were talking about in that session that I tuned in. And that's the reason why I stayed in there for a long time. Like, I was just like tuning in. I'm like, bro, like, I've got so much nuggets that could potentially help not just women, but men. Like, because I know that there are men out there that are literally uneducated in terms of, you know, not just sex in general, but like themselves. Like they're probably going through a bit of insecurities too. Like the amount of men that I've spoken to that look stunning, you know, they're like, bro, all jacked up, you know, got a heart of gold, but literally hate their bodies. I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense. And I'm like, yeah, because what society portrays on social media, or what society, you know, portrays in the media, or just in general, compared to reality, is like, it doesn't align. Like, there is no like lineage, you know, towards the two. But this is the reason why I wanted to gain this conversation, because we are the bridge, right? Through this conversation, people are going to start getting some, you know, education and I guess a bit of learning. And so to kind of go like follow on to what I was just mentioning about, what is it that you have learned, you know, through, you know, your Monday, you know, like your Monday night, you know, sessions or your chats, or just, I guess, on this journey of talking about sex, what's kind of been some of the things that you've learned that you can possibly share to those out there that are listening?
I think the biggest thing that surprised me, so there's been a couple things that have like, wow, like stuck in my brain. One big thing, and I spoke to Ainsley about this as well, was the lack of knowledge around UTIs, around just that part of the female anatomy, or even with males too, and that basic rule of peeing after sex, and that it just kind of clears out and makes sure that nothing goes in places that it shouldn't. But the amount of women and men that answered that they'd never heard of that before just blew my mind. And they were all sexually active, but they'd never heard of, number one, the phrase just to pee after you go sex, and number two, why you would do that. So that blew my mind, because it's just like, what the heck? Like, for me, that seemed to be the most simple thing to do, just to protect yourself and your health. And yeah, that was a big eye opener for something so like, and I guess that's why I do it, because it's something so simple to me. But the amount of people that had no clue that was a real thing, I'm really glad that I was able to share that with them. Another thing as well is there's a lot of people out there who do not communicate with their partners about the types of things they like and don't like. I get a lot of questions about, how do I tell him I don't like it this way? Or how do I tell her I want to try this? And it might be something as simple like, oh, I want to try doggy style. And I don't think she'll be into it. And I'm like, dude, you're not asking for like an orgy. You're asking like, just to change a position. Just talk. Like
Yeah.
literally just say, hey, what do you think about trying this tonight? And if she says no, then just be like, well, fine.
Yeah.
Just turn around and go sleep. No. No, but you're not going to know until you ask. And if you ask in a way that's not, timing is everything. Timing is definitely everything. You do not ask when she's busy with the kids, or when you're like halfway there and you're just about to put it in her bum and then you're like, hey, how do you feel about this? And just kind of do it. Like you got to have a proper conversation and a genuine conversation. Try not to laugh about it, because if you start laughing about it and making it a big joke, then she'll either take it, or she or he will either take it the wrong way, that you're mocking them or that you're just taking the piss, or that you don't actually value their input. And I know it's hard, especially as polys, we laugh about everything.
Oh, yeah. And it's bad. It's so bad.
Especially if it's something that makes us uncomfortable. There's just like jokes everywhere and just laughing everywhere. So, talk. The amount of people that were just like, how do I get him to do this? Or how do I tell him to stop doing this so I can stop faking? I'm like, girl, there is no reason to fake an orgasm, like ever. If you're committed to this one person and that one person is the only person you're sharing your body with, why are you wasting time faking it? Like that is the only person who is going to give, other than yourself, that's the only person who's going to give you pleasure and satisfaction. So don't push them down the wrong way. Like you got to show them how to do it properly so that you both can actually enjoy these moments together.
Yeah. No, I love it. Like I love listening to this because, I look at my old self, like growing up, it's like this conversation is the very conversation that I needed, right, when I was growing up, because hell, I didn't even know what I was doing, growing up. Yeah. And if I had this like, information that we're talking about right now, when I was growing up, I would have been, and like, I wouldn't say I would be in a much more better place, because like I'm grateful for like where I'm at right now, but I would have been more educated. And because no one in my family was like educating on me like about it. But let's go like even more deeper, like even people at school, like, the school teachers or like, and even that, when you're young, it's not like you want to, like, you're keen on asking, but there's that stigma, it's like, oh, if you ask, then like, you're horny. Or if you end up asking a teacher, it's like, oh, you want the teacher. But it's like, that's just how society has created us to look like. Like, we're conditioned to that. When realistically, it's like, yeah, as you mentioned about time, it's the timing. Like, you need to make sure that you're asking at the right time. Like, don't ask when you're alone, like as in fully alone and you're horny. Like, that's a different story, because you're going to get a different reaction or you're going to get a different result. But if you already know who you are and you're self-aware of yourself, then that could be kind of a different approach towards, asking that question. But I love the fact that you were mentioning about, peeing. Like, how you mentioned about peeing after. Just to clarify, is that both men and women that you were mentioning about?
Yeah. So definitely with both of us, pee is meant to come out. Fluids are meant to go out. Nothing's meant to go back up those ways. It's supposed to be a one-way street. So when you're having sex or like anything and there's all this liquid and fluids and sweat and, stuff everywhere, sometimes leftover shit, in all these places, there's bound to be at some point stuff pushed up the wrong way. And so at least if you pee, then it would just clear it out. And your body is amazing because it's literally designed to do that. Like the amount of times if you finish sex and go sit in the toilet or go stand in front of the toilet, your body will just do it because it knows that it needs to clear it out. It doesn't matter if you're on an empty bladder, it would just clear it out for you.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that you mentioned it, because like that was something new to me too when I was listening into, the live stream. But I thought about it and I was like to myself, why is it that I'm getting these informations from just a normal being compared to a person that is, obviously like when I was going through, primary school, we had like Healthy Harold, like the giraffe. Yeah. And like that's what we learn about that. But then I'm thinking to myself, it's like they only tell you so much. It's like they only tell you so much information. Why? Because it's like, oh, like we don't want to give them too much information because they're young. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, if anything, you should give us the whole thing. Like, as in, like, get us to become like conditioned to, so that when we get to that point, we're not lost, or like it's like we don't know what to do. So I think, yes, education is important, but if we look at Healthy Harold and what they're doing, it's like, I feel like you need to share at a much more deeper level than just the surface level. But I get it. I understand. Like they've got things like barriers that kind of stop them. Like for example, they got policies, they got procedures, and that all kind of stems from the upper room. But this is where we come into play, just as normal beings that just are willing to have a conversation about this. But thank you, sis, for sharing about the information about that, because I learned a lot. From that live stream session. But my question to you about this whole thing about sex talk is, like, what has been like the biggest impact that you have seen in terms of a story or a testimony from someone else? Because I know that you mentioned that there was some confessions out there, and the reason why I wanted to ask this question is because, let's be real here, there's probably someone listening to this being like, I actually jumped on here because I wanted to know more about, sex and getting into the sex talk. There may be someone that may be going through a similar situation to the person that had confessed to you what they were going through. So is there like a confession from somebody else that really impacted you that you want to kind of share on this podcast episode?
Not particularly. I'd say the most recent one, like even if we look at last night's session, something as simple as someone saying, thanks to your Monday nights, I know it's guaranteed sex afterwards because my wife always gets turned on. And for me, that, like, I love knowing that people are out there having happy sex.
Yeah, come on.
Because I have happy sex. So why would I want anyone else not to have it? And it saddens me and also makes me kind of cringe when couples go like, oh, we haven't done it in like 6 months. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, and I think because we're both physically touch people. Yeah. So for us, we can't fathom that because we just, that's our love language. That's a very important part of our relationship. And I understand for a lot of, other relationships, that's not an important part. And maybe it's because they're lacking in their proper quality love language component that they don't want to have sex with their partner. They're like, nah, like I can't be bothered with you because you never help me with the kids, or you never make time for me, or you never, you're always out, whatever it is, that they aren't being fulfilled in their relationship. So they don't feel like giving that part of themselves over. So for me, hearing couples who clearly, if someone is saying something like that, it's guaranteed on Monday night. Like, I love this night because of this. It makes me happy because I'm like, oh, what were you guys doing before this?
Yeah.
Like, how was it being sparked? So if I can be a spark, like if I can somehow help nurture that component in your relationship and you're both happier as a couple because of that, then I'm stoked. Like, I'm happy as.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the thing I love about stories, and I love about people sharing their stories. Like, not just stories, but sharing, like getting into the hopes of saying, hey, like, because of your Monday night chats, like, I'm having better sex now, or like we're now having sex, because it's like becoming a conversational starter. Like, let's say, for example, you're watching or whether you're doing it through the polls or doing through live stream or whatever case that you're doing, it's like it's just a spark, and that's pretty much sometimes all you need. Like, all you need is just a little spark, to kind of gain a bit of attention. And so yes, just massive shout out to you for being kind of bold enough, not even kind of, like being bold enough, like to go out there, because just like anything that you do, like there's always going to be some backlashes. There's always going to be some barriers that people are going to be like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. And so what keeps you driving, sis? What keeps you driving?
I've had someone, which was funny, I had someone, those jokes, but they're not jokes.
Oh no, yeah, 100%. Like the banter ones. Yeah.
I've had someone say, because like Monday nights. So Sunday I'll go to church. I'll go to church at 4:00 in the afternoon. And if I haven't posted many stories after church, I'll usually post that I'm at church because I love it. I'm proud to go to church. So I'll post after church, and then maybe if I haven't posted anything much on Monday, and then all of a sudden went straight into sex chats on Monday night. I swear this one person was like, not the going church and then talking about orgies. Like,
Well,
it was, yeah. And it wasn't like I was talking about it. It was one of the conversations. But the point, and they were laughing about it as if like, just jokes, whatever. And I'm like, no, you're not. I was like, no, that was a bit of a stab. And I addressed that. I kind of reposted it purely because I know that there would be other people that think the same thing. If one person says it, there's 20 other people thinking it.
Hard.
So, and I posted it, and I remember having a little rant about it, saying, first of all, like, how is me being a 32-year-old woman who's married talking about sex to normalize it within our Polynesian community because no one else talks about it? How is that a bad thing to be paired next to someone who goes to church? Like, are we not allowed to talk about sex because we believe in God? Like, are we not allowed to, like, even from that standpoint, as a married woman, I was like, can I not talk about sex? Like, at least I've got a ring on my finger. Like, not that I'm anyone who doesn't, but it's like, why do you make it sound like I am now not allowed to? Because I go to church, we're not allowed to talk about sex, or at least not allowed to have it next to each other on Instagram. Like, for me, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would God create us and make these little bits and pieces work together and have sex and feel great if we weren't allowed to talk about it and weren't allowed to do it? It just blows my mind. And those little offhanded jokes where they have their own insecurities, most of the time I find when people speak like that, it's because they feel uncomfortable or they've got an insecurity, and the only way they can deal with it is just projecting it with these snide little jokes on Instagram.
The subtlety, honestly, the subtlety. Yeah. I love the fact, sis, that you mentioned about think about this, right? And this is the way I kind of rethought, or I guess it changed my perspective on talking about sex, and not saying like we need to talk about it often, as in like talk about it all the time. It's just like normalizing it, making it a normal conversation. And I thought about it, I'm like, who created sex? Who's the one that created our being? It's like, but you're going to the place where he's there, like, or not there, but I'm saying like he's like where you feel like your presence is met there. It's like, all right, cool. But on Monday, it's like, but think about it, who has created the very thing that I'm talking about? And it's like the very person that you're meeting on a Sunday. So it's like, for me, it's like, I totally get you, sis. I totally get you. And, to kind of bring a bit of truth, I believe that there's a big difference, between, churchianity and Christianity. People just going there on a Sunday and just, just going there for the Sunday session. That's it.
In the box.
Right. Whereas, as you mentioned, like, ticking the boxes. But then we know that there are other people out there that are actually, going there because it's their resting place, or it's the place where they get fed. But then even during the week, it's like they're still going to have conversations. And so, like, especially about sex, like, and that's something that you're doing right now. So I get where you're coming from, sis. Like, I get where you're coming from. And you know what? I want to be the first one right now to say, keep going. Like, keep doing it. Like, keep like, bring it out, because I'm learning. I'm still learning, like, new things.
That's awesome.
And, like, I'll see, on your stories, just so much value from other people, mentioning, hey, I'm going through this struggle. And you just kind of voicing it out based on your experience and based on what you're learning. Like the education that you've learned. But before we actually wrap up this podcast, because we are going to start slowly landing the plane, my biggest question I want to ask you is, let's say, for example, you had an opportunity to talk to your own self when you were younger. That 13-year-old kid that was getting into, the party life, the sexual life too. If there was one thing that you could instill into her, that you know now, like the information that you know now, or the education, the talks that you're having, and even just hearing the confessions, what would you kind of share to her now based on the information that you've learned?
I'd probably instill that, because even now I believe that sex can be separated from emotion. And if people want to have casual sex and do whatever without having that tie, without needing that emotion attached, then I'm like, cool, good for you. Because I was like that when I was single as well. Because for me, it's just that physical touch that I'm just like, yeah, like I love this feeling, and thanks for your energy exchange, sir. You have a great day. Like that kind of feeling. But I would tell my younger self that that's not the only feeling that you need to feel sexy and to feel desired. That by having sex with someone, as a single person, as a young person, that doesn't make you sexy or desirable. Just because one person or 2 or 5 people wanted to have sex with you. That could just be them wanting to have sex, not necessarily desiring you as a person. So I would tell her that it's important for her to accept herself first, because it took a long time for me to stop needing that validation from other people and to actually start being cool with myself and appreciating myself and knowing my worth. And even if I still had the same kind of actions where I would go hook up with people, at least when I was doing it, I knew my worth. And I knew it wasn't just because they wanted me. It was because I wanted them as well. It went both ways.
Yeah. Now that's amazing. And that's something that I would kind of agree on too, is just understanding that, hey, before you even, I guess, attach yourself to someone else, how about you first attach yourself to you? It's a one very person that we tend to forget to attach ourselves with is our own self. And it makes sense as to why so many other people get into breakups, constant breakups, or they start to, maybe when they're going through, sexual encounters, it's like, I don't want to do it. And it's like, whoa, like, why are you so upfront? And it's like, I'm going through this. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to know? Like, how am I meant to know when you're not communicating to me about it?
Yeah.
So it's like, this is a very common theme. Like, I would not be surprised if there's a lot of people listening to this podcast episode and saying, I literally go through this. Like, this is exactly what I'm going through. And so, yes, sis, thank you so much. Like, I really appreciate you jumping on, but also just having this conversation, because it's not just our PI or our Pacifica community that needs to hear this. I think the whole world needs to, because I know that there are other cultures out there that are probably going through similar situation as to what our community is going through. But we're going to start, finishing off, this podcast episode. But the last question I do got to ask you, and you already know the question I'm going to ask you, is, for those out there that have been listening, people are getting tons of value, through this podcast episode. I'm getting tons of value, and I'm learning a lot about not just yourself, but also about the things that you do. But there may be someone out there that are just wanting just a bit more, right? Just a bit more before we finish up. And so, is there any encouragement or empowering message that you can possibly share to those out there that are listening?
Yeah, I think I've got so many, but if we stick to one, I would say to back yourself. That if you want to go out and do something new, or if you want to, whether it's in the house with your family, with your spouse, or business-wise, starting your own podcast, or starting up a new sport or whatever, you should really back yourself. Like, the amount of times that we back other people and we support our friends and we're like, you can do it. Like, I believe in you. Keep that same energy for yourself. Because at the end of the day, when you start the journey, when you finally start it, you're going to be your number one supporter. So you need to make sure that you've got your own back. So just back yourself. Believe in yourself the same way that you would believe in your friends.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm encouraged too, guys. I'm encouraged by that. But thank you so much, sis Kimaea. Thank you so much for jumping on. I really do appreciate you also taking out your time, on this Tuesday, of this recording, for taking out your time. But if there were anyone out there that was wanting to know more about you, or I guess perhaps connect with you, especially when it comes to the sex talk, what's the best way that people can, communicate to you?
It'll be on my Instagram. It's Kimaea_unfiltered. So just follow me on there. And then that also in my bio will have links to all the other stuff that I do as well. Yeah, on Instagram.
Yeah, cool. So for those out there that are watching this video through our YouTube channel, it's going to be right down, like the link's going to be down below. So like in the description, so check it out. But if you're listening to this podcast episode, either through Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I'd highly encourage you guys to check out our Instagram page at the Impact Podcast Show, because Kimaea will be featured on there as part of our special guest, list, but she'll also be a part of the following list too. So, if you're listening to this like 2-3 years later, you guys can just check out our following page and scroll through and you'll be able to find Kimaea. But guys, that is it. That's all we got. Kimaea, thank you so much for jumping on.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day, everyone.
All right, cool. So guys, that's it. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for listening. Thank you guys for watching this podcast episode, and we'll catch you all in the next one.